important and really historic consensus solution to a topic that I think is probably the most important, among the most important that we face today in the United States, and will determine the America of our children and our grandchildren. And I will be very proud to vote for immigration reform. I don't know that it will be exactly the bill that's been proposed, and I want to thank this panel and others that have been here before and will be here after for making suggestions that they do. But I think we can be a better America, juster, freer, and more productive if we bring those 11 million people out of the shadows and do the background checks. We may figure out better ways to do them. And I'm a law enforcement guy. I believe that background checks can always be improved, but those background checks will make us safer. And enlisting and recruiting those 11 million people in a path to earn citizenship, I think will be good for them. And I don't know, Mr. Krikorian or Secretary Kobash, whether you have spent a lot of time with the Dreamers, but
Janice Kephart, former counsel for the September 11 Commission and a principal of 911 Security Solutions. Ms. Kephart.
Chairman Leahy, members, thank you so much for having me here today. I appreciate very much this committee's continued interest in reform and securing our borders and protecting our national security. I further appreciate being back as an alum of the committee. I was so privileged to staff. I begin by putting the bill in context of both the illegal border problem and issues with legal immigration processing. On the legal immigration side, in light of the Boston Marathon terrorist attack, we're reminded once more that border security is indeed essential to national security. Historically, the 1986 amnesty program was fraudulently used 5 times by terrorists in attempts to establish residency. 3 of 5 succeeded in attaining the benefit, but the key for each of them was that simply applying for the benefit allowed them to embed long enough to commit the terrorist act. The effect of today's bill, unfortunately, won't be that much different than the 1986 bill. Why? 2 recent examples of the immigration system serving up immigration benefits to terrorists show the system is not much better now at discerning terrorists than it was in 1986. First, Boston Marathon terrorist 19-year-old Tsarnaev just received his naturalization on September 11th of this past year. Was there really no way to learn of his terrorist leanings just a few months ago? Less well known, a Syrian known deeply affiliated with the 9/11 hijackers and assassinated Yemen's al-Qaeda leader al-Awlaki was recently granted asylum on his 3rd attempt, despite federal law enforcement reopening the case. Second, the illegal problem is big. The southwest border is far from secure. Over both the Texas and Arizona borders, we are seeing a huge surge in illegal crossings, with the Texas Border Patrol saying it is looking at tent cities to deal with the onslaught, and central Arizona witnessing a 494% increase in illegal crossings from August of last year to November. Here's the issue. There is no way that illegal entrants who have never encountered our immigration or criminal system can be vetted as to who they say they are. And with 10 to 20,000 foreign-born terrorists that federal law enforcement know reside in the United States, that creates a serious concern for more terrorists using the compassion that we have for the Dreamers to embed here illegally using the legalization in this bill. There are problems with the border security triggers as well. Overall, the concept of a comprehensive southern border strategy is really useful, but since the Homeland Security Secretary isn't really required to assure border security, just state that it exists, that doesn't really help us assure that our borders are indeed more secure. The metric used in the bill to determine a 90% effectiveness rate depends on a 100% detection rate of apprehensions and turnbacks, which is not even close to being able to occur today. If there is not a 100% detection, then the 90% effectiveness rate set forth in the metric is going to be inaccurate. So how would a 100% detection rate be best achieved? We aren't really told in the bill at all. And unfortunately, that makes the metric fail. Moreover, the metric only applies to 3 of 9 border sectors. That's an open invitation for smugglers to realign with the new metric and use whatever other six sectors are not considered high risk. The bill's version of a mandatory E-Verify holds no consequences for illegal aliens who fail E-Verify. Moreover, E-Verify's construct adds 3 more levels of review to a non-confirmation, culminating in an alien receiving 4 opportunities to get authorized. The practical result is that this appellate process for the alien creates a really difficult atmosphere for the employer to terminate an employee, even when the grounds for authorization don't exist. In terms of the exit system requirement, this nation most certainly needs to fulfill the mandate to complete a comprehensive exit system that includes air, land, and seaports of entry. However, S744's exit component fails to include the largest volume of crossings, which is at land borders. In addition, the exit component is unnecessary for 2 reasons, I believe. 1, 6 prior inconsistent exit laws have already complicated the exit requirement enough. We don't need another one. And second, just a few weeks ago, congressional appropriators used their purse strings very wisely to realign exit implementation to Customs and Border Protection. CBP owning exit implementation may be the game changer we need to get the program done, because not only does CBP need that exit data to conduct admissions, but its sister agencies, state, use it for visa adjudication, and ICE needs better data to determine its overstays as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to receive your question.
I testify today without having the opportunity to read this bill in its entirety, as the Gang of Eight's rush to pass this bill denies their fellow Americans the time and means of effectively studying the bill and adding input. This legislation was crafted behind closed doors with big business, big unions, and groups representing illegal aliens. Groups with their own interests, groups that stand to make millions from this legislation. Anyone with a significantly different opinion on immigration reform was prohibited by the Gang of Eight from having input. Lawmaking in our nation has indeed taken a strange twist, as senators invite illegal aliens to testify before Congress, and groups representing the interests of illegal aliens are brought into the development of our nation's laws, but American citizens working as law enforcement officers within our nation's broken immigration system are purposely excluded from the process and prohibited from providing input. Last week, desperate to be heard, border sheriffs, interior sheriffs, deputies, and immigration agents all came to Washington, D.C. with the hope that the Gang of Eight would hear their concerns. They held 2 meetings on 2 separate days. Not one member of the Gang of Eight attended. Last week, when I respectfully asked a question of the Gang of Eight at their press conference, I was escorted out by police and Senate staff. I was spoken to with anger and disrespect. Never before have I seen such contempt for law enforcement officers as what I've seen from the Gang of Eight. Suffice it to say, following the Boston terrorist attack, I was appalled to hear the Gang of Eight telling America that its legislation is what American law enforcement needs. Since 2008, President Obama has ignored many of the immigration laws enacted by Congress and has instead created his own immigration system that unlawfully provides protections for millions of illegal aliens. Of course, Congress has done nothing to stop the president, and I submit to everyone that America will never have an effective immigration system as long as presidents and their appointees are permitted to ignore the United States Congress and pick and choose the laws they will enforce, and indeed enact their own laws without Congress through agency policy. This bill does nothing to address these problems. In fact, unbelievably, it gives far greater authority and control to the President and the Secretary of DHS. Exactly the opposite of what our country needs to create a consistent and effective immigration system. If the laws enacted by Congress are not enforced by the executive, America has no promise of future enforcement. That much is certain. Currently at ICE, immigration agents have filed a lawsuit against DHS and ICE because both have refused to enforce the immigration laws enacted by Congress. Agents cannot arrest individuals for entering the United States illegally or overstaying visas. Agents are prohibited from enforcing laws regarding fraudulent documents and identity theft. Agents are not permitted to arrest public charges. Agents are forced to apply the Obama Dream Act not to children in schools, but to adult inmates in jails, releasing criminals back into communities, criminals who have committed felonies, who have assaulted officers, and who prey on children. At an alarming rate, ICE deportation numbers have plummeted since 2008, evidence that interior enforcement has in large part been shut down, contrary to reports by presidential appointees at ICE and DHS. In closing, my initial impression of this bill thus far is that in large part it appears to have a lot of loopholes. Everything from gang activity to arrest records to criminal backgrounds and fraudulent activities at many levels are acceptable or waiverable under this bill. The entry-exit system doesn't even utilize biometrics, making it ineffective yesterday. We already know that aliens are engaged in illegal activities that will bypass this system. At a time when Congress is proposing legalization for millions, I think Americans expected a stronger enforcement across the board that would prevent another wave of illegal immigration. Unfortunately, in terms of enforcement and providing for public safety, I think this bill is going to fall short in terms of legalization and eventual citizenship for 11 million illegal aliens. I think its success is guaranteed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that concludes my testimony.